I wanted to talk to you about when you realize your loved one is a narcissist. This is something that maybe doesn't get talked about enough, and it can actually be very traumatic, so I wanted to address that here on the show. When someone encounters a pathological narcissist, they often get a sense that something is not right with this person. If the narcissist is a family member, such as a parent, people might not start to realize the narcissist is different from other people until they start to mature and grow up. This observation can sometimes override someone's knowledge that the narcissist behavior is abusive because they can clearly see that something is wrong with this person and they want to help. This is the trap that many people get stuck in. It may be how you found the show because you're looking for answers. If you found them here, I'm sorry to hear that. I hope I can clear a few things up for you and maybe help you understand what's going on a little better. Because of people's own intrinsic humanity, the narcissist behavior may be reframed into a context that is better understood by the victim. For example, when telling the narcissist that their behavior is hurtful does not stop that behavior, it's often assumed that the narcissist doesn't understand. This is because the victim's own basic humanity dictates that if someone says they care about another person and are told they're hurting that person, they will then stop their hurtful behavior. When this doesn't happen, the victim is forced to reinterpret the behavior into something they can understand. The narcissist must not get it. They must not understand. This is how people find themselves explaining basic concepts like respect, consideration, taking turns, sharing, and manners over and over again to a grown adult. People often believe that if they can simply find the right way to explain it, the light bulb will go off in the narcissist's mind and they will finally understand. This will then lead to the hurtful behavior being stopped. This is a misunderstanding of how narcissists operate. It's an understandable misunderstanding, but it is a misunderstanding. It is the victim's own reframing of the behavior that has largely caused this misunderstanding, although, of course, the narcissist usually does not try to dissuade them. The truth has been in front of the person the whole time, but because it's so foreign to their experience, they don't recognize it. After they've been exposed to it for a time, they should realize and recognize, but many times they don't because they don't want to. Their entire life has become about reaching the narcissist and fixing this problem and healing this person. This is why so many find it so hard to let go of the relationship. Not only is there usually a trauma bond, which is very powerful, but they've been denied the gratification they have worked and waited so long for. It can be very hard to walk away from that. There's no satisfactory conclusion to the situation. There's no closure and there's no happy ending. It's just an endless cycle that never goes anywhere. People in relationships of any kind with narcissists can feel the relationship has never progressed and that they've never gotten any closer to the narcissist or know them any better than they did when they first met, even after years have gone by. This is partly because the narcissist rejects all true forms of intimacy, but it's also because who you are trying to get to know doesn't exist. They're not real. There's no depth to the narcissist's facade. It's a superficial mask designed to hide the narcissist's true self. There is nobody to get to know. They are empty and void of identity. People searching for answers as to what's wrong with their loved one, because something clearly is, often come across information that is very troubling and even appalling. A lot of the experiences out there by people who have been abused by narcissists are pretty awful. They're hard to listen to. They're hard to read. And even though the victim might see their story in that, they can remain in denial for quite some time because, though it's a relief to be validated, the reality of pathological narcissism is very distressing. It's shocking, it's hurtful, and it's embarrassing. How could I not know? Why didn't I see it? How could I have been so stupid? These are logical feelings and questions to ask yourself, but they miss the point. You're a human being, that's all. You believe in the basic humanity of other human creatures. That's why you didn't see it. Why you put up with abuse for so long is a different question, but that's one that can be answered in time. Dealing with the shock of these realizations is hard enough, because it's not just one realization, it's many. The first is usually that there really is something wrong with this person, and it's not just you. That one is often a relief. The second and hardest is usually the realization that this person does not care. There was no misunderstanding. There's no other problem. They just don't care. And when people realize that, they often look back at the behavior and realize it was staring them in the face the entire time. The narcissist does not care. Not the way you thought, not in any way at all. The third realization, which usually comes very close to the second or even simultaneously, is that even though you found the answer, there's no solution. All the time you spent looking for answers and trying to understand and trying to get through to this person, hoping that with the answer would come the solution, was for nothing. There will not be a happy ending. This is often a very large letdown and very hard to internalize emotionally. Many people can't get past it. They can't let go of the hope. They can't accept the idea that their time was wasted on someone who doesn't care at all. They might even decide to ignore the truth and stay in the relationship, still pushing for that satisfactory outcome that they believe is possible. That's totally understandable, but it's dangerous. You can stay in a relationship with a pathologically narcissistic person if you choose. There's no law against it, it's your life. But you're only hurting yourself if you don't have realistic expectations. A person can only be taken for a fool once. After that, they know better. Staying in a relationship hoping the other person will change so that you don't have to is no way to live. It's unhealthy, and you deserve better than that. Don't be afraid of change. Once the shock of the realization wears off, and this can take a while, the recovery can then begin. Often people are able to see things a little more clearly after a while, and they come to understand that it wasn't a waste of time. Nothing is ever a waste of time if you learn, and the lessons taught by narcissistic relationships have the power to help us grow immensely if we're able to be honest and accepting of the truth. Don't beat yourself up for not seeing it sooner or for not leaving sooner after you realized. It took as long as it needed to take for the lesson to really stick, and now it will. Today I want to talk to you about why narcissists believe they own you. It's not uncommon for people in relationships with narcissists to feel as though the narcissist in their life thinks they own them. They may take your things without asking, take your money, speak for you, take your vehicle, insist on a detailed accounting of everything you've done, require permission for things, and any number of other controlling, possessive behaviors. This is largely due to the fact that narcissists cannot separate themselves from the world around them. Everything is seen as a part of themselves, the same way that very small children see the world. If they see something they want, they just take it. It's a very simplistic and immature view. This is why no matter how many times you say, "This is mine, please ask me before you use it or take it," they won't. Why should they have to ask? Everything they see belongs to them. This includes you. It's kind of like the way you see your arms and legs. They're yours, you use them, you don't think overly much about them. Narcissists take for granted that what they want is theirs and always will be. This is one reason rejection hits them so hard. It disrupts that way of thinking, it shoots holes in that belief, and they react very negatively to that. If a toddler takes a candy bar from the shelf and tries to leave the store with it, you will stop them. When you do that, they start crying because they want it and they don't understand why they can't have it. Narcissists basically react the same way. It's a reaction of loss and rage created by the inability to understand that not everything belongs to them. Part of the reason for this feeling of ownership also comes from enmeshment. Narcissists enmesh themselves with people. It's the only way they are capable of bonding. Enmeshment is when the boundaries between two people are so poor that it becomes difficult for people to tell where their individual self begins and the other person ends. This results in the narcissist essentially taking over the other person, asserting their needs in place of the other person's needs and trying to steal their personality and good qualities, like Invasion of the Body Snatchers. When this happens, it increases the feeling of possession and ownership the narcissist has over the other person, and why wouldn't it? They've essentially taken over everything but the person's physical body. Some of the more overt narcissists try to do even that, creating rules and protocols for how the other person is supposed to talk, think, dress, and behave. It's for these reasons that narcissists can become very distressed at autonomous action or individuality by people they believe they own. That's not in the script. The people around narcissists are not supposed to do things that the narcissist doesn't agree with or is not involved in. If they do, the narcissist often takes it as a threat and a rejection, endeavoring to destroy this individuality completely. Now you might say, well, how can it be a threat or a rejection if it has nothing to do with the narcissist? That's the threat. That's why it's a rejection, because it has nothing to do with them or because they weren't consulted or whatever. Pathologically narcissistic people live in a world that revolves around them. Everything and everyone exists for them. They feel no hesitation about taking things, breaking things, using things, or people because they feel it's their right to do so, and no amount of explaining will make them understand that it's not okay. You can tell them over and over and over again, and it won't make a bit of difference. Do yourself a favor. Save your breath. Narcissists are generally impulsive, irrational, and extremely immature. They are careless, irresponsible, and foolhardy. They don't seem able to consider consequences or think about things before they do them, just like children. When pressed for an answer as to why they've done something, narcissists may seem just as mystified as everybody else. "I don't know" is a very common answer, and it may be the truth. Narcissists seem to possess very little insight as to why they do things, simply reacting on impulse as we see children do. Like children, narcissists often feel helpless in a world of more powerful, more competent, more knowledgeable adults. That's why they create a false self that is the diametric opposite of that. They want to appear like everybody else. They want to appear powerful, competent, knowledgeable. Whatever they are attempting to appear to be, you can be sure that the reality is the opposite of that. However, this helplessness is also an excuse. It's easier to be a helpless victim. If you're a victim, you can never be blamed. If you're helpless, you can never be forced to take responsibility. Children are not blamed for not controlling themselves or for their choices. Narcissists don't seem to feel they should be either. They don't seem to understand the difference between a child and an adult, and they will actually often say things to that effect. These are mostly things that no mature, self-respecting adult would ever say. They may compare themselves to the children, compete with the children, or complain that their spouse holds double standards because the kids are allowed to get away with things that they're called out for. They don't seem to realize that adults and children are held to different standards or why that should be.
I'm going to briefly discuss a tactic with you that is a preferred tactic of covert narcissists, and is their use of something called the word salad. So let's get our definitions right. A covert narcissist as opposed to an overt narcissist. What's the difference? Well, the way that I've simplified it, and it's pretty gross oversimplification, but it really helps to get a foothold on quite a complicated psychiatric definition, is that the overt narcissist thinks that they're awesome and that they deserve special treatment. And generally speaking, the world agrees with them. They have enough people in external reality to say, yes, yes, you are awesome, we should all do what you say, that it satisfies them that they can afford to be overt. The covert narcissist thinks that they're amazing, but generally speaking, the world does not agree with them. So the world, their external reality, is not giving them feedback that yes, they're perfectly entitled to special treatment, that the rules don't apply to them. What does this create in what is fundamentally a narcissist? There isn't really two distinct types. Everybody with NPD kind of flows between these two states. So they actually function in reality in a more nuanced view as the two primary emotional suprastates of the NPD, overt and covert, and they actually represent two separate strategies. The overt strategy would be, fuck you, I'm taking this because I'm amazing and you're my slave. The covert strategy would be, oh, please let me have that because I'm in a lot of pain and I need that more than you, and I'm really a good person, but I'm the victim of some terrible tragedy. Give me the thing that I wanted the entire time. Wheedle, wheedle, wheedle. How does this manifest more deeply than that? Well, it means that where the overt, usually, I'm saying the overt and the covert, so they're two separate people, they're really not, they're two emotional suprastates, feels confident because they have a secure source of narcissistic supply. The covert is in a constant state of desperately and frantically trying to hold on fleeting little bits of pieces of contrived narcissistic supply that are always running out.
Narcissists' fake apology. Many people believe narcissists don't apologize at all, and that is technically true. An apology is, at the very least, an admission of wrongdoing, if not an expression of remorse, and this is not something you will hear from a narcissist except in times when it is absolutely unavoidable. However, it is not correct to say that narcissists never utter the words, "I'm sorry." Many do, and they may even believe they're actually apologizing, but because they lack remorse or empathy, their apology is often what we call a non-apology apology or a faux apology. A faux apology is a statement that sounds like an apology but does not actually express remorse or admit any wrongdoing. It's a way of trying to achieve forgiveness without admitting fault. It's the classic, "oh, I'm sorry you got upset" type of apology. It's a manipulation. This is not an apology. Because narcissistic people don't actually understand or acknowledge the emotions of other people, and because they believe they are the victim in any and all situations, they don't generally believe they've done anything wrong when it comes to other people. They're simply going through the motions of what they think they're supposed to do. If someone says you wronged them and you want them to let you back into their good graces, you apologize. It's not an admission of guilt for the narcissist, and it's not an expression of remorse. It's a means to an end. This is why they'll often say things like, "I already apologized, what else do you want?" even though they will continue to defend their behavior after they've apologized. They don't realize that doing that makes the apology completely meaningless. It's as if they believe the simple act of saying, "I'm sorry," means everything is okay now. This is actually not unlike the way a child thinks. "I did what you asked, but it's still not okay." Why? This is because the narcissist has no understanding of why they should apologize. Your idea of why they should apologize and their idea of why they should apologize are totally different. You believe an apology is needed because you were wronged. This is not the reason the narcissist believes an apology was needed. The narcissist believes the apology is needed because there's no other way to get what they want. They don't really understand your reasons and they don't care. They're not doing it for you. If there was a way for them to get what they want without an apology, you wouldn't get one. This so-called faux apology actually accomplishes two things usually, besides being a basic manipulation. First, it asserts that the narcissist did nothing wrong, and second, it usually attempts to state that you did do something wrong. "I'm sorry you got mad" is not only not an admission of wrongdoing, it implies that the person they're apologizing to did do something wrong. For example, let's say the narcissist has said something extremely rude or hurtful to you. You react by getting upset, as most people would. It turns into an argument with the narcissist insisting that you attacked them and all the standard denials and blame shifting and gaslighting that they're famous for. But let's say this time you beat them into a corner somehow, or you threaten to abandon the relationship or otherwise leave the situation, and in order to prevent that, they apologize. This so-called apology might be something like, "I'm sorry I spoke out of turn," or "I'm sorry for talking back," or the ever-popular, "I'm sorry for having feelings." This not only makes it clear that the narcissist did not do anything wrong, it states very bluntly that something's wrong with you. That you are treating the narcissist cruelly by forcing them to apologize for standing up for themselves against your horrible abuse, or worse, just for being a person. Make no mistake about it, this is done completely on purpose. You can see it in their face. It's designed to make you feel bad and to make you look bad to anyone who might be listening. It's not an apology. It's just another attack. If you call them out on it, more than likely they'll just continue in the same vein, that you're so evil and sadistic and horrible that being forced to grovel and being beaten to their knees and apologizing was not good enough for you. This is a never-ending battle that is totally pointless. You are never going to get what you want. What you want is a real and true admission of wrongdoing and a sincere apology, and you are not going to get one. They will just keep twisting it and turning it and being insincere and mocking you and saying that you're the one doing things wrong and never admitting anything and never showing real remorse. It's a waste of time. The narcissist's apology is like most other things about them. It's fake, it's hollow, and it's insincere. It's a manipulation. It's a means to an end, just like all the rest of their behavior. You will be more likely to get blood from a stone before you will get remorse out of a pathologically narcissistic person. They're just not capable of it. But by understanding this and adjusting your expectations to be more realistic, you can take their power to hurt you away. If you don't expect a sincere apology, it won't hurt you when you don't get one. I hope this clears the few.
They would rather die than to be called out that they are a liar, that they are fallible, that there is vulnerability or there is a slight inferiority. When a person has spent their whole entire life mocking, belittling those people that they believe were beneath them, they then get to this point in their life and they then can't be seen as a failure. So they would rather die.
Does the narcissist hate you? The answer is yes. The narcissist in your life does hate you. They hate everybody, including themselves. They hate themselves the most, and they hate themselves for not being good enough. They hate you for proving that to them every day simply by existing. The very fact that you exist is a threat to the narcissist because it reminds the narcissist that they're not perfect. That's the twist here. All of the narcissist's hate for you is really hate for themselves. So not only do they not have genuine positive feelings for other people, like love or respect or acceptance, they don't even have genuine negative feelings for other people, like hatred. It's all about them. The sadistic, hurtful games that you think the narcissist is playing with you are actually games the narcissist is playing with themselves. You're just a tool to do this with. You only matter as far as the narcissist can use you, either to hurt themselves or to make themselves feel better. You yourself do not matter at all. It's all projection. Narcissists hate people who aren't narcissists, and they hate them for not being narcissists. They hate people who are not mentally ill, who are not broken or flawed or weak. They hate people who are not the way that the narcissist perceives themselves to be. So they project those insecurities onto other people. A person they initially admired becomes hated for having or being everything the narcissist wishes they themselves could have or be, and the narcissist becomes envious and hateful because the person is, in the narcissist's opinion, an undeserving recipient of such wonderful qualities. Therefore, they're a walking reminder of how much of a failure the narcissist really is. The narcissist imagines that they are being compared to this person by others and that they're coming out a distant second. They cannot abide by that, and they will do anything they can to destroy the perception they think other people have of that hated person being perfect or not flawed. Narcissists are consumed with pathological jealousy, envy, and self-hatred. This creates a toxic cocktail which results in a personality that is bent on destroying the people around them in the misguided belief that knocking other people down makes them appear taller. Today I want to talk to you about why narcissists don't pay attention. You probably noticed they seem to have pretty bad memories. They don't remember what you said or anything about you at all. They don't seem to remember that you were ever nice to them, that you ever did anything for them, and they certainly don't remember anything they did wrong. Some of this is just lying, but some of it is because they really don't remember these things. One reason for that is because, without getting too technical here, the way their brains process information is different than the way non-narcissistic people process information. Their brains perceive almost everything as negative and threatening, therefore they often don't realize good things have happened and consequently don't remember them that way if they remember them at all. With most narcissists, if something does not fit into their all-negative perception of the world, it simply doesn't compute. It's not processed at all. It is often discounted or ignored completely. This is why if a positive experience does manage to get through and be understood as a positive experience, they will often seem genuinely shocked by it, as if they cannot believe any good people exist. This is also why experiences that are perceived as positive or neutral one day will be reevaluated as negative later. This particular thing has to do with their emotions. Emotions run a narcissist's life for the most part. They believe feelings are facts. This is the lens through which they perceive everything. Most of their emotions are negative, therefore so are most of their perceptions and consequently their experiences. Someone asked me once if narcissists had positive experiences to counteract the bad ones, couldn't that change their perception? My answer was that the problem isn't that narcissists don't have positive experiences. The problem is that they don't recognize them. The perception of the problem is the problem, in other words. Now, most people's perception is colored by their experiences and things like that, but unlike narcissists, it's not completely clouded and controlled by these things. Most people don't rearrange events in their external reality to make these events agree with their internal emotions and experiences. Most people will not insist something happened that did not happen just because they feel that's how it went. Most people won't insist someone is being abusive just because they feel that person does not like them, even though the person hasn't done anything abusive. Most people won't insist someone doesn't care just because they don't care. As another example, most people won't say you're making fun of them or start screaming abuse at you about how you don't care when you ask them what's wrong. Most people don't believe everyone in the world is a manipulative liar bent on self-gratification just because that's what they are. This is how narcissists view the world. Whatever they feel, everyone else feels too. Every time they look at another person, they're seeing a mirror with themselves reflected in it, either positively or negatively. They do not see another person at all. This leads us to another reason they seem to have bad memories, because plainly and simply, they're not listening. They don't remember the specifics of your new job or your son's age or anything else because they don't care. If you're not talking about them, they could care less. You know, it's like that old thing. But enough about me. What do you think about me? This is why they often seem so put out when you bother them with something unrelated to them. They are put out. What's going on in their minds is far more interesting than anything you have to say. They don't care for conversation. They don't care for sharing ideas. They care about discussing themselves and or winning arguments. That's it. Now, this is not to say they can't fake it. They can, and some do it really well, for a time. They are often masters at appearing engaged, concerned, and attentive whenever they want to. But it can't last, and it never does, because they simply have no true interest in anyone but themselves. The majority of them simply need other people around to prop up their non-existent self-esteem and to use as a punching bag. The ones farther down the spectrum towards psychopathy often don't even care about that. The relationship with any of these kinds of people is supremely selfish and completely one-sided. They seem like they aren't paying attention because they're not. They don't care. This is why they might turn the TV up when you're talking, or why in conversations they simply continue on with what they were saying as if you never even spoke. They don't hear you because they aren't interested in what you're saying. This can be very hurtful to people, and it's hard not to take it personally, because when you care about somebody, blatant dismissal of yourself and your feelings like that is painful. They don't understand why you're upset, though, and they most certainly don't care. That's why we say it isn't personal. They'd have to see you as a person for it to be personal. You're there to be used when they need you. You're not supposed to bother them when they don't. Some narcissists, in fact, get very angry at that type of intrusion. Who do you think you are anyway? How dare you disrupt something they're doing with something that isn't about them? How selfish are you? Were they smiling too much for you? Did you see that they were happy and just have to ruin it? This is an unwinnable battle with a person who does not even understand the problem and would not care even if they did. They are by and large not capable of having anything other than parasitic relationships, and you will never be as important to them as they are. Today I wanted to talk to you about the similarities between adult narcissists and children. This, of course, is not going to cover every single similarity, but I'm sure you can fill in plenty of the blanks for yourself. There are many similarities between the way adult narcissists think and process things and the way that children do. In fact, in many ways, these processes are virtually identical. This is because narcissists have arrested emotional development. The emotional maturity that most children go through did not occur within the narcissist for whatever reason. Often this reason is abuse or neglect during childhood. These things cause the child to focus intensely on themselves to the exclusion of all other things because their needs are not being met and their emotions are not being validated. This also results in the mind being taken up with trying to defend itself from the abuse. The mind is, in a sense, always playing catch-up, and because of the trauma that it is experiencing, some important developments are skipped, so to speak, or don't happen. The mind becomes locked in a pattern of defensive reaction and emotional perception made up of many different but related facets that matures extremely slowly and is extraordinarily resistant to change. We call this reaction defense pattern malignant narcissism. In children, these things are normal. In adults, they are evidence of disorder. Young children and babies are not capable of understanding the emotions or needs of others. They only know want and need. They have no way of taking care of their own needs, and they can only scream for someone else to do it for them. When the mother is exhausted and deathly ill with a fever and vomiting, and she's been up for 3 days and she simply cannot cope anymore, does the baby sympathize with this? Does the baby stop crying? No. The baby does not recognize this. The baby does not care because the baby cannot care. They can only keep screaming out their needs regardless of the mother's suffering. This is, in essence, what you are dealing with when it comes to narcissists. For the most part, narcissists do not recognize, understand, or consider other people's needs. They see only their own and their inability to meet them. The more damaged the narcissist is, the more narcissistic they will be, the more immature they will be, and the more childish their way of thinking. And this is not childish as in silly, this is immature and childish as in the emotional maturity and understanding of a toddler. For example, besides the hysterical tantrum behavior we see in many narcissists that is very clearly on par with a young child, narcissists often believe they are immune to the things that happen to, quote, regular people. This is an example of something called magical thinking, which is a phenomenon we commonly see in very young children. A child that makes a wish for a pony may believe that they're going to get a pony. That is what magical thinking is. Narcissists see feelings as facts the way that children do. Narcissists see everything in the world as an extension of themselves, the way that children do, and narcissists believe in their own perceived omnipresence and immortality as children do. They have always been, they will always be. So children believe, and so narcissists believe. The view that they are just another person that must fit into a wider world does not occur to young children. How could it? Rather, they function under the assumption that the world fits around them and that everything they experience or encounter is related to them in some way. This is the same way narcissists see things. They have never matured past this extremely immature way of looking at things. The idea that the world does not revolve around them never occurs to children, as it does not occur to narcissists. This is why they tell you to make sure you talk with your child so that the child does not think that divorce is their fault, because children perceive everything in their world as relating to them, as flowing to them, as flowing from them. For example, children view their parents as only having to do with them and connected only to them, rather than as separate people with their own lives, needs, wants, feelings. Parents are very one-dimensional to young children. Despite the fact that children are only one part of the parent's life, the child does not see this or understand that in any way. To a child, parents only exist as their caretakers. It's the only context that children view parents in, and it's the only context they can understand. This is identical to how narcissists view other people. Outside of the narcissist and the narcissist's needs, people don't exist. As children mature, they learn that this viewpoint is not true. They learn to see and appreciate their parents as individuals that are separate from themselves. The development of the narcissist is so arrested that this, coupled with such extreme self-focus, means they are never able to separate themselves as authentic individuals from other people and from the external world in general. Because of this, they often feel acted upon by the world and other people or circumstances, rather than as people who act in the world. In their view, they do not act, but rather react to things that are being done to them. It's as if they never outgrew the idea of themselves as powerless children, unable to take control or ownership of their own lives. They behave as though other people are still responsible for them and their emotions, the way that parents are responsible for a small child. They seem unable to own their own choices or even to recognize that things are choices. And this is also like a child. Narcissists are generally impulsive, irrational, and extremely immature. They are careless, irresponsible, and foolhardy. They don't seem able to consider consequences or think about things before they do them, just like children. When pressed for an answer as to why they've done something, narcissists may seem just as mystified as everybody else. "I don't know" is a very common answer, and it may be the truth. Narcissists seem to possess very little insight as to why they do things, simply reacting on impulse as we see children do. Like children, narcissists often feel helpless in a world of more powerful, more competent, more knowledgeable adults. That's why they create a false self that is the diametric opposite of that. They want to appear like everybody else. They want to appear powerful, competent, knowledgeable. Whatever they are attempting to appear to be, you can be sure that the reality is the opposite of that. However, this helplessness is also an excuse. It's easier to be a helpless victim. If you're a victim, you can never be blamed. If you're helpless, you can never be forced to take responsibility. Children are not blamed for not controlling themselves or for their choices. Narcissists don't seem to feel they should be either. They don't seem to understand the difference between a child and an adult, and they will actually often say things to that effect. These are mostly things that no mature, self-respecting adult would ever say. They may compare themselves to the children, compete with the children, or complain that their spouse holds double standards because the kids are allowed to get away with things that they're called out for. They don't seem to realize that adults and children are held to different standards or why that should be. For example, the narcissist must be asked repeatedly every single night to bring their plate into the kitchen or throw their clothing in the hamper rather than leaving these things on the ground. Instead of simply doing it, the narcissist responds that little Johnny never does it either, but he doesn't get yelled at. Little Johnny is 7. The narcissist is 40 and is one of little Johnny's parents. The discrepancy here is obvious. This is the type of response you would receive from a child that does not want to do their chores, not an adult. An adult shouldn't even need to be told. To the narcissist, however, this is a clear example of favoritism and being attacked solely for who they are. Little Johnny is getting away with the same thing. It does not seem to enter their mind that there is a very large difference between a 7-year-old and a 40-year-old. Regardless of whether or not they actually feel that way, the childishness and absurdity of this argument is really unbelievable. It's almost shocking in its ignorance. There is not only the complete refusal to behave as an adult, there is an inability to even understand why this would be expected. The truth is, underneath all the horrible things they do, underneath all of the expectations of special treatment and everything else, the narcissist is still that 5-year-old child pretending they're somebody else to escape an abusive situation that ended years ago. When all their reasoning is examined, when all their behavior is scrutinized and looked at through the lens of perspective rather than pain, this is what we're left with. A person with the emotional maturity of a toddler who cannot understand why they're expected to behave otherwise and who is trying desperately to pretend that they're somebody else. All of their attention seeking, all of their manipulations, all the gaslighting, smear campaigns, all of their abuse, all of the hurtful things they do, when seen for what these things really are, they're nothing but childish behaviors that have been perpetrated by an adult. Every single one of these things is seen in children. Gaslighting is a 3-year-old with chocolate all over his face who is hiding the chocolate bar behind his back in plain sight, saying, "What chocolate, Mommy? I don't have chocolate. I wasn't eating chocolate." Smear campaigns are a 6-year-old telling lies about a girl to that girl's friends so they won't like her anymore. They can all be compared to the behaviors of children. Though these behaviors are sometimes seen as sophisticated schemes, they really aren't. They are the same childish and petty things we all dealt with on the elementary school playground. They're just more confusing and therefore more dangerous because they're coming from an adult. Today I wanted to talk to you about projection. It's a very common occurrence in narcissistic relationships, and it makes up a huge bulk of the reason why they do certain things. So what is it? Projection is when the narcissist takes something of their own, like a feeling or a behavior or a trait, and projects or puts it onto another person. The best example of this is probably when the narcissist is continually accusing you of hating them or of having feelings you don't have. You have no idea why they're doing that because you don't hate them, and your behavior certainly wouldn't be coming across that way to anybody else, so where are they getting that idea? The answer is projection. Narcissists have serious emotional problems, to put it lightly. Despite what many think, narcissists do have emotions, and their emotions are often very strong, even overwhelming. Many narcissists don't consciously acknowledge their emotions at all, yet these emotions do exist, and they control every aspect of the narcissist's life and color their perception of everything. To the narcissist, feelings are facts. This creates a convoluted internal landscape, especially for those that are in denial of their emotions in general. They can feel these emotions, but because they deny and refuse to acknowledge them, they often experience them as happening externally, meaning coming from somewhere outside of themselves. They can feel the hatred, but because they're in such denial, they cannot acknowledge that it's self-hatred. This is too hurtful to acknowledge and too hard to defend against, so they assign that feeling to somebody else. I don't feel this way, you do. In this way, they keep these hurtful feelings at bay and preserve the fragile fiction that their entire existence is predicated on. Their entire life revolves around maintaining that false self and the idea attached to it, which is that they're not the horrible pieces of garbage they secretly believe themselves to be. Without that false self and the sustenance they receive from other people through it, they have no ability to regulate their emotions or validate their self-worth. So they'll go into a downward spiral that ends with decompensation, dissociation, and sometimes even psychosis or suicide. They literally fall apart without it, and narcissists that do not have an extended network of those they can feed off of are perfect examples of that. They are often low-functioning, depressive, and prone to suicidal or other self-harming types of behavior. The overwhelming majority of narcissists were themselves victims of childhood narcissistic abuse, so they end up with the same idea that all victims of narcissistic abuse end up with, that simply being a normal human being is somehow wrong. Basic human flaws and normal limitations of ability are considered inexcusable failures by the narcissist, both in themselves and in other people. Virtually all of their projection and the behaviors related to it are centered around this one thing. The narcissist's delusional, childish idea of what a good person is and the illusion they're trying to create that they are one. Good people don't hate themselves. Good people aren't abusive. Good people never make mistakes or have accidents. Good people are perfect. Good people are never at fault for anything. Good people are always right. Good people never fail. Anything they do or feel that does not fit into this idealized emotional definition is projected onto other people so that the narcissist can deny it's a part of themselves. I didn't do that bad thing, you did. I don't feel that bad way, you do. Projection is able to alleviate some of their distress, but not all of it. They're never able to actually be perfect, so they walk around feeling shame and self-hatred all the time. Pathologically narcissistic people, like most victims of narcissistic abuse, carry a permanent sense of failure around with them always. They have been taught that they're not good enough and never will be. In defense against that and the horrible self-hatred and shame that it provokes, they've created a pretend self that they think meets these expectations. Of course, nothing can meet those expectations because those expectations are totally unreasonable. Everybody has flaws. Everybody makes mistakes. To the narcissist, this is completely unacceptable, even if it's something really minor. It's more than unacceptable. It's evil and wrong and means that they are too. So they blame. They gaslight. They project. I didn't fail. You failed. Or you forced me to fail. Or you sabotaged me. Or you're blaming me. Or you're just saying that because you hate me. And on and on and on and on. What they're really saying is, I cannot take the shame of this horrible failure. You take it. They want you to carry that because they just can't. Their emotions are frightening and overwhelming to them because they don't know how to regulate or control them. Now, you would think in the case of minor mistakes, it would help if you said something like, I understand that you feel shame over this mistake or this thing that you did wrong, but it's not that big of a deal. But this is usually not helpful. They are utterly convinced of this programming, and letting them know that you see their secret shame and vulnerability often makes things worse, not better. They won't believe you anyway. To them, it is a big deal. It's a monument to their ultimate failure and eternal incompetence as a person, which is the secret they're spending all their energy trying to hide. You can see evidence of this when they're forced to acknowledge a mistake or to take responsibility for something they've done. Instead of just a normal dispute or a regular conversation, it becomes a sweeping indictment of their self-worth. Suddenly the conversation is about how you believe they're a terrible person and subhuman because they didn't call the gas company or because they left muddy footprints on the clean kitchen floor. And you're like, whoa, dude, I'm not saying that at all. But it's too late. Pointing out a mistake they've made, something they've done wrong, or a flaw in the narcissist is the ultimate betrayal in their eyes. You've unwittingly exposed that disgusting, defective thing they're trying to hide, and they're never going to forgive you for that, and they're never going to believe you didn't do it on purpose. They perceive this exposure as a blatant attack, a threat on their very life, and they will fight back with everything they've got against that. This is actually often one of the first serious indicators people get that someone might be a narcissist. The inability to understand that having flaws or making mistakes is okay, and the disproportionate rage that happens when these things are pointed out. In the end, the biggest difference between those who end up pathologically narcissistic and those who do not is probably that, for whatever reason, narcissists are unable to mature and move on. The people who don't end up narcissistic are able to accept, regulate, and control their emotions. They don't need to resort to projection, blame shifting, and gaslighting because they are in such horrible, deep denial of their own feelings. They know what a good person is, and they know what it isn't. They know that it's okay to be human. Sadly, for the narcissist, this is not something they will ever know or be able to accept.